talk a little bit about some of the head coaches you worked for before you became a head coach? Guys like Matt, Greg, Doherty.
Yeah.
Just what did you take from each of those guys?
I don't know that I could tell you exactly what I took from each one of them, but I mean, obviously I've stolen, like every coach has, from each and every one of them. I mean, you know, we talk a lot about Matt Painter and Greg McDermott, but I mean, Matt Doherty was National Coach of the Year when he was at Carolina. So you just try to take the things that they do and do well that fit your personality and take those with you, and then obviously put that execute that within your program. And then those things that maybe were better for their personality, or maybe they felt like you should play a lot of zone and you're not a zone person. You just leave that behind. But you know, it's like a master's class in coaching when you coach for, or when you work for such good coaches. So I was extremely blessed and fortunate. But with that being said, I always was very careful with choosing my jobs, you know, because I always wanted to be with people of high character and obviously be with good coaches, because I always wanted to learn.
You stayed at some of those places a long time too. You weren't like a 1 or 2 years and gone. Was it important to sort of put some roots down and learn from those guys and develop? And would you kind of talk me through?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've always been very calculated with the jobs that we've taken. Like, and I get it. The coaching industry is so fickle at times that sometimes you have to move quickly. For example, Western Kentucky, I was there for a year, and I hated that because the people there were fantastic to me. It's a great program, but when you get an opportunity to come to Oklahoma State, you have to take it. But with that being said, I always prioritized my family in choosing any job, and I never. For example, last year, I never moved my family to Kentucky. I allowed my daughter to make a decision if she wanted to stay and finish her senior year in Texas, so that it wouldn't be her third high school. Because at the end of the day, it's more important for me to have a long-lasting and loving relationship with my family and my daughter than to move her across the country and have her be angry at me, especially with 17, 18-year-old girls. So. With that being said, I've always tried to take jobs with the thought process that I would be there forever. Unfortunately, as coaches, you're not allowed to be there forever. But when the opportunity for myself and my family came to advance, I've always taken it if it was the right opportunity.
20 years in as assistant, why did in 2020 the Texas A&M Corpus Christi job? Why was it important for them to make that jump to be a head coach after being an assistant for so long?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, that's the first one that offered me the job that I wanted, right? And at that time, you know, we were very, very successful at Purdue, so it was hard to leave. I knew what we had coming, which obviously has turned out to be a Final Four run. But when you're in coaching, at some point you have to bet on yourself, and I tell this to young coaches all the time. You have to bet on yourself, and then you have to go be able to prove it. And so I felt like that was the right time, especially for me, because, you know, my daughter, she had graduated and she went to college, Caroline. She was in college at Edwardsville playing soccer, and my mom was ill and she was declining. So it allowed me to get back and be around my family and be with my mom for the last 2 years of her life. It just was great timing. It was great timing.
Besides good coaches, is it a correct inference that you know a lot about the post position? Because most of the guys you've worked under that have been head coaches, they've been really good post development guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think that each person that I've worked for had their strengths, right? But obviously at Purdue and even at Creighton, I mean, we had Justin Patton that was drafted. He's more of a modern post than he is a Zach Edey low post. But yeah, with that being said, they all were good coaches and played through the post, right? And the best shot in college basketball is the layup and the dunk. So if you can play through the post and you can get easy baskets and opportunities, it just makes sense to do so. But with that being said, I also, you know, Coach Jaden Ivey and Carson Edwards and those guys were great offensive guards. So I've been blessed to be around a lot of really, really good players throughout my tenure.
What was it about Oklahoma State that just drew you to the job whenever you heard about it?
Well, I mean, as I said out there, I mean, this is home to me, you know, to be back in Texas, Oklahoma region and be able to compete in the Big 12 conference. It's the best conference in the country. And you're giving yourself an opportunity to compete for a national title every single year. If you're competitive in the Big 12, you're going to have a chance to compete for a national title. So if you're going to do this and you're wired to be as a competitor, you want to put yourself in a position to be able to win a national title. And obviously that's something that can be accomplished here at Oklahoma State. That's been proven before.
Your quick turnarounds, coach, at Corpus and then obviously Western Kentucky. Obviously good players help. What's the key to a quick turnaround?
Yeah, good players. Like you said it. Like this ain't rocket science. You know, you got to do a good job in retaining the guys that are currently on your roster that fit with the way you want to play and are of the right character and have enough talent to get you where you want to go. But then you've got to also fill the roster in with guys that, again, have the requisite talent, but also have the right mentality. Because obviously you look at this locker room right now, you got to have the right guys in the locker room, and that's the most important thing. That's 1A, and 1B is talent.
You mentioned from a player standpoint. What about from a staff perspective, building your staff? What's that been like for you?
Well, I mean, I've got to make some decisions here. I'll meet with, you know, maybe some of the guys that were on Coach Boynton's staff. I know some of them from my years of coaching, and then just kind of make the best decision for us moving forward. Obviously, I've done this for a long time and have a lot of people that have worked with me and even worked for me. So, you know, just like players, you've got to have guys that are of high character, of high moral standard, and then are going to work extremely, extremely hard to help Oklahoma State get where we want to go.
You don't have, Steve, you don't have big shoes to fill from an on-court success basis, but Mike Boynton was perhaps the most beloved coach at this school. What can you do to get yourself ingrained into the athletic department culture, the community, all those things that he was so good at?
Yeah, well, Mike Boynton is a good man. He's a good man, and he's a good basketball coach. Whether or not his success translated to the level that was expected, that's not for me to decide. But in terms of answering your question, I mean, everywhere that I've been a part of the athletic department, I've been a part of the community, and that's important to me. I mean, my son's going to be running around Gallagher Eyeball all the time, and I'm sure he's going to wind up in somebody's practice at some point, and they're going to kick him out. But that's just the way I've always done it. Like, I can't ever think of myself any differently than the cross country coach or the wrestling coach or the equestrian coach. I mean, we're all in this together, and to be very honest with you, those guys have had really good programs, and I need to learn from them, just like hopefully, you know, they might want to learn from me. So we're all in this together.
What did you learn from your last two stops, you know, especially that might help you this first year?
Patience. I think patience is always the biggest thing. When you take over a job and you walk in the door and you've got 3, 4, 5 guys maybe in the transfer portal, and you're looking around and you're saying, man, I don't really have a roster. You know, that can be tough. It can be nerve-wracking. So I've always been calculated in, as we talked about a minute ago, in my coaching moves, but I've also been very calculated with who I've recruited, where I've recruited, and make sure that they were a good fit. So just got to be patient, again, to make sure that we fill this room with the right people.
When you don't have a base to build around, when maybe you do have a lot of guys in the portal that first year, does that change how you look, what talent you look for, how you recruit?
No, it does not. It does not. I mean, you're still looking for guys that have a high level of talent and a high level of character. And, you know, maybe you don't find those in day 1 or day 2. It might be week 3 or week 4. It might be week 8 or week 9. But you've got to keep turning over the rocks, and you've got to keep doing your job until you find those people. Because ultimately, and I've never believed in shotgun recruiting. And what I mean by that is just shooting a big open shot and see what happens. Like my staff and I will put an enormous amount of time in investigating and making sure that we fill this program with the right people.
And you talked about it a little bit before, but with the college landscape changing so much in the last 6 years, especially, you know, NIL, how has that changed things for you, how you go about your business? Obviously, been very different from how it was in 1995 when you started, especially here as of late.
You know, it's funny, it actually hasn't changed that much, and I'm going to say this, and some people won't understand it, but when I started in 1995, I coached at an NAIA high school in Incarnate Word. Well, there, you gave partial scholarships, so I may, say it's $20,000 to go to school there, well, I may give you $10,000, and I may give him $10,000, but he's going to get a $10,000 academic scholarship, and maybe you don't. I'm not knocking you by any means.
So damn.
But, so when all of that, you know, is factored into the decision, do you give him the scholarship and not you? Because now, hey, I can go get another guy, whereas you're gonna say, hey, no, I need $20,000. So that factors into your decision. My point in saying all of this is when you get into NIL opportunities, those decisions matter. And you have to look at what their market value is, you have to look at what they think their market value is and figure out somewhere in between as to who's a fit and who's not a fit. And that doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. We've just, we've started to move towards a little bit more of a business model.
Do you anticipate any of that being a bit different now, being at a Power 5 school rather than, Western Kentucky, stuff like that, where it seems a bit more common?
Sure, of course. Yeah, we're gonna have more money here, guys. I mean, you're in the Big 12, and that's obviously part of my job is to raise and find more investors in our program. Like, you're investing in individuals, but really you're investing in Oklahoma State basketball. And that's the way we've got to look at it. It's a necessary evil, if you will. The rules have changed, and so we've got to embrace the fact that these guys are able to be compensated for their name, image, and likeness. And let's compensate them well, especially the guys that we want to retain.
You guys are welcome to continue down here, but just let you know Chad Weiberg is now answering questions upstairs.
Chad's a lot cooler than me, guys. You're not going to hurt my feelings.
Chad mentioned your Texas roots and what he said, and you've obviously alluded to San Antonio, Incarnate Word, at Duke, and Corpus. What do you feel like the importance of those Texas roots are for you as you start to build and try to get this program going?
Well, I mean, I think we're understating, my Oklahoma roots too. Like when I was at Stephen F. Austin, I had a young man from Star Spencer High School. I had a kid from Seminole Junior College, Percy Green, Edwin Tatum, and those guys were good players for us, first team all league. So, to this day, Percy Green's, he goes from being a player to a friend, and his son's a junior college freshman now. And so, like, I've recruited this region forever. And we've had some really good players along the way from the state of Oklahoma and from the state of Texas. But like when you look and you walk through these hallways and you look at the NBA players, where are they from? They're from Texas. And so we've got to do our due diligence and drawing a circle around Stillwater, Oklahoma, whether it's a 200 to 300 mile radius, and find the best players and then go get them here and then develop them and help them to get where they want to go so we can get where we want to go, right? So I think it all rolls in together. I think it's more of a regional fit than maybe just Texas.
What does the situation look like with assistant coaches? Do you know if some are staying? Are you bringing any in?
I haven't gotten that far.
Right, I
Yeah, I'll
understand.
meet with some people this week from the previous staff probably. And then obviously I've got a lot of people in mind that have either worked with me, worked for me, or just have been friends, in the business for, I think I've done this 28, 29 years. So that'll all evolve here in the next couple of weeks. But again, it's like players. You have to bring in the right people. So I'm in no hurry to say, hey, I've got to have you here by Monday or Tuesday or any of those things.
Steve, because of the regional ties that you talked about and the time that you were coming out of college in 95 or coaching around here in 04, what's kind of your big picture view of what Oklahoma State basketball is? Kind of not just in the present, but over your life.
Yeah, I mean, this is the pinnacle, right? Like I grew up Big 12. Like I followed the Big 12. I aspired to play in the Big 12. Obviously, I was not good enough to be a player in the Big 12. But yeah, I mean, this to me growing up was big time basketball, big time athletics, and obviously it still is that. The bar is high. Coach Iba, Coach Sutton, all those guys have set the bar extremely high, and now we've got to get back to where we were.
You talked about your dad a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit more about just the nature of his work? Lineman is not an easy job.
No, yeah, no. I mean, my dad, he went in boots and jeans and a shirt every single day, and when he came back, at the end of the day, I mean, there was blood and sweat all over those articles of clothing. That's what he did. Whether it was, you know, climbing up that pole or fixing one under, you know, having to climb under a house, you know. But, you know, my dad was a great man. I mean, he always would find time to stop by the house, you know, if he was in the area. And when you work for the telephone company, you have your own truck. And so his truck would have a igloo cooler that would have water in it. And the best water ever, like you know, you're a little kid. And your dad, you know, you hold him in this regard, and he'd stop by the house and hey man, you want some water? And we'd have some water and talk for a few minutes, and then he'd get back to work. But like my dad, I'll never forget this, but you know, when I graduated in 1995, my father was retiring. And when you work for the telephone company, you have a dispatcher or a dispatching unit, and then you talk to those people and they say to go to A to B, C. And I'll never forget that the ladies that worked with him looked at me and said, you know, the thing that we respect or we like the most about your dad is he never had a bad day. And my dad was not a man of big words. Like his skin would be crawling right now in front of all these cameras. But he treated them with respect every single day. He never yelled at them. He never blew up at them. And he did his job. And I think that we've lost a little bit of that in today's society, just taking pride in doing your job every single day and doing it to the best of your ability and doing it the right way and treating people the right way. So we need to continue to work towards that with everyone and make the world a better place.
Go ahead.
What about your mom? What role did
Yeah,
she
my
play
mom
in
raised
that?
6 kids. I mean,
Yeah,
heck yeah,
yeah.
anybody that has kids know that's a full-time job in itself. She worked at the school. She was a substitute teacher, but she chased 6 kids around, and we all played sports and did different things. So they were absolutely supportive. We did not have a lot, but we had enough, and we had a loving household, and that's all you can ask for.
How jealous are you of Caroline right now?
I'm gonna go see her. I'm jealous of Matt Painter. I'm not jealous of Caroline. Like, I don't have any interest in carrying the stats and taking Zach Eady to press conference. I want to coach that guy. I want to coach on the Final Four. So, yeah, I'm excited for her more than I am jealous, for sure. What was your question?
We talked about some of the guys that you coached under. In doing some research, and some of your moves, it seems like you didn't maybe necessarily know them too personally whenever you made the move. How important was that for your growth to get out of your box a little bit and go learn under new people?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. You do not see this very often in coaching, where you get hired by somebody that you really don't know. I didn't know Matt Doherty to save my, I didn't know Matt Doherty from the guy on the moon. I didn't know Greg McDermott, but and I am not a braggart by any means, but because of the job I had done and the reputation that I had, like-minded people, they suggested me to go work for those 2 guys. Even Matt Painter, I didn't know him real well. And, I take pride in that. I take a lot of pride in the fact that, I was able to build a good enough reputation as a basketball coach and a recruiter and a father and all those sorts of things that people would hire me without knowing me. And then I did a good job for them, and they've become friends for life. So, yeah, that's a really good question. You've done your research, but I take pride in that.
And then along with that, some of the guys that you've coached alongside as assistants, you mentioned Chris Beard earlier. He took off a little bit before you. Even Darian DeVries gets a head coaching job before you. Was that tough on you to see these guys that you've been colleagues with kind of getting the call before you, or
No,
what was
not
that
at
like?
all. I work with Greg Gary. I work with Micah Shrewsbury. They got jobs ahead of me. I'm never. I hate to sound like a kid, but I'm not a hater. Like I wanted them to succeed. I wanted their families to, evolve in the business and those sorts of things. So I knew my time would come. I've always had a quiet confidence about myself, and I'll always continue to have that. So. No, not at all. I want everyone to be happy and get what they deserve.
You said when you were that GA number 2, you said you never dreamed you'd be introduced one day as the Oklahoma State basketball coach. Is there a moment when you, maybe not this university specifically, but when you sort of started to really believe that might happen for you, a job like this?
I don't know how to say it. I can't say that I didn't envision it. But I never also, and I do have a quiet confidence about myself, but I also never thought that it would become reality, or I was never sure. Because, I mean, there's what do we got, 361 Division I basketball programs right around there? So, I mean, think about your percentages of doing that. Like, these guys all say they want to play in the NBA. 1 to 2% of you are going to play in the NBA. It's really hard to do. While I have always felt confident in myself, man, you never know, because it takes some lucky bounces, right? You have to have a little bit of luck in anything that you do, but it also makes sense just to do things the right way and just stay the course and believe in yourself and believe in the course. And Nick Saban talks a lot about the process. I believe in the process, and the process begins and ends with hard work.
Thank you. I was curious to go back to the Purdue topic a little bit. Since you recruited Zach Edey, what is it like to see him and those guys in the Final Four with that program you made an impact on?
Yeah, no. I mean, I recruited several of those guys, and they're all great people, and they're great ambassadors for Purdue, and they play the right way, and they do things the right way off the floor. So, I mean, you take pride in it, right? Obviously, I don't probably take as much pride as Matt Painter because he's the one coaching them in the Final Four, but no, you take an enormous amount of pride in being a part of their journey. And, it's kind of like your kids. You enjoy watching them and supporting them, and you wish them the best. Obviously, I expect big things from them on Saturday at 5:09 or whatever time the game is.
When you get to
What we'll
this.
do here, anybody that wants to walk and talk, we can